We got sent to Amsterdam. It's something that Angela and I have been talking about a lot, and I have many folders on my computer about mother tongue and how to address it in schools such as ours. And it's also something I looked at South Bank in my last school. I visited schools as an evaluator and trainer looking at different mother tongue programs, and it seems to be an ongoing challenge for international schools. So my main purpose of going to this conference, I was really interested in mother tongue, who's doing what and how has it changed and where does technology fit in. The conference itself was from language policy to practice, and it very much focused on EAL, classroom and other models of support, the theory behind it, and also mother tongue, very much on practical strategies. There were a fantastic range of speakers there, so we had the Jim Cummings, and we had Meral Gallagher, and we had a variety of other people. Dr. Catherine Snow from Harvard, some really high quality speakers there. And they were, I think, very focused on answering the questions and giving us the help we want, as opposed to just doing the research that is easy to research but doesn't necessarily make that step into school. So there was some great stuff. There were some presentations that we didn't feel so useful, but hopefully some of the things, we can't share everything, but some of the things we share today will be helpful to us. So my little main interest, as I say, was on mother tongue. It always has been. I've looked at different models where you've had language teachers going into schools, doing lessons in advance throughout the day, where you've had language as part of the curriculum, so it's throughout the school, bilingual programs, lots of different ones, because I firmly believe the sentence about most of our children come with a major asset already. Whatever difficulties they have in learning to read or socially or anything else, many of our children are already bilingual, which is something I'm not, so I always see that as a huge asset that maybe we can capitalise on. That's incredibly hard to do. So there's a little piece here. Meral Gallagher is one of the main people who are working in this field, and she has a video of when she was in Marymount, Rome, where it's been a huge focus for them, this valuing mother tongue in school, and they have it imbues every part of the school. There's a little video to start off. So.
Sono molto felice di essere con voi in questa giornata molto importante. My name is Meral Gallagher. I'm the ESL teacher in the elementary department of Marymount International School in Rome, and I'm the author of a book called Equal Rights to the Curriculum, Many Languages, One Message. One of the main themes of my book is the importance of mother tongue languages and maintaining and developing your first language. I believe it's very important that international schools have a pedagogical approach that's open to other languages and other cultures. This means that we have to be thinking about who we are in school. Identity is very important, and languages are part of who we are. International schools have an identity. The home languages in international schools should be viewed as very important. It's important that children transfer skills and strategies for learning across languages. I call this interlingual teaching and learning. We have to use all of our home languages as cognitive tools. The children at Marymount are going to share some of the reasons that we believe that it's important to do this.
Konnichiwa. I think Japanese helps me because I'm good at speaking in Japanese.
Salam alaikum. When I think about my work in Arabic, it helps me understand it better, and it helps me learn English.
Ciao. Miss Gallagher lets us use a book called New Workbook, where we could put words in our own language and in English. I really like this because it helps me learn new words.
When I write in Danish, I feel happy because I like Danish. It is my own language from it.
Welcome. My first language is Danish. My ideas come in my own language first. we use our own language in some lessons. For example, reading. When we have to write something, we write it in our own language first, and this helps me.
Hola, I speak Spanish, English, and Italian. By speaking all these three languages, I feel happy. But I like speaking Spanish most because it is my language. By using Spanish in school helps me remember the language and to understand more words.
Zdravo. My language is Montenegrin. When I'm reading an English text, I think in Montenegro and then I know in English. I think it's really good for children like me to use our own language because that makes us feel good. Konnichiwa. My first language helped me to write a sentence. First, I think in Japanese because the words come easy if I think in Japanese. After I decided what I want to write, I changed it to English and I write it. Hola, using my language at school helps me understand things, and if I understand things, I can communicate better and get good grades. I like Spanish.
I'm born. Using my languages in school helped me to understand new English words. When I think a word in Italian or in English, I can understand it better.
Kalispera. Using my language in Greek helps me, especially in science, because most words come from the Greek language. Also, when I write in Greek in school, it will help me when I go back to Greece.
Yeah, I like using Chinese in school because my mom said if I always say English, my Chinese will be bad. And when I go back to Taiwan, my Chinese and math will not be good as other people.
Avida-san, arrivederci da Marymount. Keep learning your language and culture. Be proud of who you are.
I think for me, many of the things that they said there, it's not news to us, but it still is a challenge for us to actually make this visible in the school. When we can't actually access what the children are writing in their mother tongue, how do we evaluate it? So what I was looking for was some practical suggestions that we can look at over the next few years. This isn't a whole, we have a lot on our plate at the moment. This is just food for thought for the future. So I was looking specifically for practical suggestions, and I had some lovely ones. I loved the little boy who said all Greek words, many words, all words come from Greek, because I don't know whether you've seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding, where there's a character that constantly goes on about, it's a Greek word, everything, excuse the Greek accent. But anyway, so I've got some small ideas that came from other schools. Some are going to suit us, some are not going to suit us. We're not at the point of looking at how we address mother tongue altogether. It was just input for us to start thinking, okay, what can we do? And I think the big thing is that there wasn't a school going, this is what you do, you hire all the teachers, bring them in, you teach them this way. There isn't one answer. It was a multiple of different things. What does it look like in the library? What does it look like in the classroom? How are the parents involved? And it was a collection of actions that different schools had taken. So I'm going to give the mother tongue part, and I'm going to hand over to the main part of why you came here. Meral. No, it's definitely Meryl's part now.
I thought it was Claudine's part next. But you're going to do an activity with me, that's fine. So you want to do that? Okay.
Just some ideas.
And I'm helping you.
That's it, she's with it done.
So I'm really desperate to go to this conference because I heard that Jim Cummins was going to be one of the keynote speakers, and I have to say that I've been an admirer of Jim Cummins for quite some time, and I was very excited to actually go and listen to him in person. He was interesting to watch because I think nowadays he seems to be focusing on something else. He talked an awful lot about something called identity texts while we were there. And identity texts are bilingual texts that children kind of write about themselves to define who they are. But that isn't really what Jim Cummins is best known for. I mean, what we really know him for is, if I can find my presentation, no signal, is his work on bilingualism and BICS and CALPS. You've probably all heard about BICS and CALPS before. So BICS are your basic interpersonal communication skills, so your social language, which most children acquire quite easily, and your CALPS are your cognitive academic language proficiency.
Have you used it on the whiteboard before?
I have used it on the whiteboard before. I'm not sure why it's not working.
Are you out of pen?
No. Very odd. We just turned it on. It's on just now. What happened to it? Anyway, so I'll talk to you to keep you entertained. So, but I have some visuals I want you to see. Did it turn off?
Yes.
Why did it turn off?
It's down. Mine died.
Mine died just very recently, but it's been through the IT department. It has been to the doctor. I'm not going to talk because I've got some pretty images I want to show to you first. But it can't be able to. It's not going to say.
You sent me your presentation. How about you use my computer? That works. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Because look, it's gone very, very well.
Here it is. Here's your presentation. So
Oh,
try and come with
thank
it. Sorry.
Might be. Where's the technology?
Can you plug it in?
I'm okay, but it turned off completely. I think. How weird.
Yeah. Share it on Google Drive. I'll bring my laptop so you can use that.
Judith's got it on hers.
Okay.
Maybe
Got mine here too.
Right, tell me now.
Just press potato.
Had it on and everything.
There we go.
Yay. Okay, thank you very much.
Would you like me to turn the lights off again? Is that the
Oh,
So yes, you're absolutely correct. The why we buy is definitely Emma's section.
So why we buy is better. Well, Jim Cummins could have put it better in this little visual you can see here, which I thought was really appropriate as we were in Amsterdam for this conference. And apparently there are more bicycles there than there are people. And so one wheel or one language can get you places. So can a big wheel and a little wheel. However, when your wheels are nicely balanced and fully inflated, you'll go farther.
Nice.
Provided, of course, the people who made the wheels knew what they were doing. that actually is from Jim Cummins' book. So that wasn't something that I invented myself. Wouldn't it be nice if it was? But that's Jim, and talking about the effects of bilingualism. And like Judith said, I'm sure this is not new for most of you, but it's just we're going over what we heard at the conference. What is bilingual education? It's literacy and knowledge in 2 languages. And actually thinking about this again, I think it's always useful because I think we always think of English as an additional language, but have been prone to think about mother tongue as not being particularly important, even though we know that it is, but not knowing how to integrate it. And I think we often think of bilingualism as being 2 languages, but not thinking of the mother tongue element of it. So this is mother tongue and English bilingualism, although Jim Cummins comes from Canada, so he comes from the bilingual model. Maybe you want to talk about how you felt about that, Claudine, when you do your
Well,
bit.
when I was listening to Jim Cummings, which was ironic because the way he was talking, the way he was, his intonation, by I would say 15 minutes, I couldn't stand it because it was really hard to, how should I say, his intonation was really, really, really tiring for an English second language or third language. And which was interesting because he was talking about learning another language. And I was like,
bilingual immersion. And some of his comments about bilingual immersion you found a little bit offensive too.
so it was interesting. He's definitely for me better to read Cummings than to listen to him in that case. So
Quality subject matter in two languages. So what we're actually doing is important too. And a method of using the child's first language to accelerate English language development. And that's from Stephen Krashen, who's also somebody I'm in love with. Can we go and see him next time? So the goals of bilingual education are to help English language acquisition, develop the child's heritage language for the personal, cognitive, and practical advantage of full bilingualism. Heritage language, I like that vocabulary actually, because that's a different way of referring to mother tongue, I think, that I heard during this conference, and I quite like that idea of the heritage language, because an idea that I had while we were there as well is that you don't always know what a child's heritage language is, and actually that's something that I come across quite a lot in my classroom. I don't know if you've come across it, where you're not really sure what the mother tongue is or what the heritage language is. It's not always really obvious. Benefits of bilingualism, this is my favourite bit. Effective in fighting the negative mental decline in the ageing process. I grew up bilingual. I think it makes me feel rather special actually if it doesn't do anything else. And so the idea that it does benefit you in all these different ways I like a lot too. Increases intelligence. I'm obviously smarter than people who speak one language. Stimulates creativity. Promotes cognitive flexibility. I think that I feel that a lot. I mean, I'm sure that most of us in the room do actually speak a second language, and I think that, for example, I find that sometimes I need to check my math, and I like to do it in another language just to be sure. And I mean, these are just little things that I notice in myself, and so things that we can discuss with children. Fosters divergent thinking. Facilitates high level of mental, linguistic and mental cultural awareness, we hope. Enables faster and more efficient learning of other language. I also feel that's all true, just from personal experience. Here I have another image which is also borrowed from somebody else. This is a Norwegian researcher, I believe, and it's just a graphic showing the difference between having one language and two languages. And so I think it's quite self-explanatory, really. If you cut it off, interrupted development of mother tongue, you end up with just the top part of the flower, whereas it'll branch off and grow another if you nurture both. And so the idea is that we nurture both. That's what we're aiming for. So after all this theory and some practical stuff, I wanted to share some ideas that we were given while we were there on vocabulary work, but it's this is not academic vocabulary. Because we attended a session on how to teach academic vocabulary, and Claudine's going to talk about that. But I just wanted to share some ideas that we came across that were to do with just ordinary everyday classroom vocabulary, and one of them was something called Foldables. Foldables are basically graphic organisers. The idea being that most of our learning is visual, that we actually have to see something to internalise it, and that these are things that you can make with your students, show them how to make them, and they can make them themselves and put them in their notebooks, and that they have key concepts on them or vocabulary or anything that you might be doing in class. So this is one that says book title at the top, and then it has setting, characters and plot. And there are lots of different ways of folding foldables as well. This is one. Pass them round if you want to look. This is another one. This is the cause and effect one. And at the bottom you would have a title. Again, I don't know, something that you might be inquiring in class. And then underneath the flaps you could have the causes listed on one side and the effects on the other. Here's another one that would be like a, maybe for a secondary vocabulary, this is a math one. So you've got your triangles, and then underneath your triangles you've got your word for what triangle that might be. So it's a scalene triangle. I don't know these words in English, but I know them, by the way. Isosceles. And what's this one? Equilateral. I know that one in English. So obviously that's because I left primary education at a certain age. So that's one. These are foldables. Foldables, they can come in lots and lots of different shapes. And if you go online, you'll find there are different ways of doing them. And this was a unit one. Gina, that's the unit you're doing at the moment, isn't it? Protecting our environment. So recycle, reduce, reuse. Just things that you can make little ones and kids can stick them in their notebooks. So they have the vocabulary. You're all going to have a go at making these next. The next one, I really liked this one. Shades of meaning was sort of finding out, making brainstorming words that all have similar meanings but are kind of on a scale. So the image that we were given actually was of a rainbow. So you kind of scribbled the words in on the rainbow as you went along. This was something that I've actually been doing with my class, but I did it as a Wordle. Wordle also, it depends on the number of times you type in the word, the frequency of the word, and how common the word is. It has it in bigger print or smaller print. So that also tells you, because it's sort of grading the words.
Didn't we also see it on paint charts as well?
Paint charts,
You know
yes.
those paint strips where you have all the different shades of green, you just pick them up in paint charts? That was another thing they did, where they used those to write the words on, so just to get the words and have them in weekends.
So
What's the size difference then? Because I see big is actually small.
because if you type it in more times and use it more times, the bigger it gets. So like you can go through a text and type in the number of times you see the word big, and if the word big is there a lot, then big will be bigger on your Wordle. So here are some Wordles.
And that was from James and the Giant Peach.
That was from
text
James
you
and
were
the
working with
Giant
grade 3
Peach.
class.
So that's an example of shape. I really like this. This is really fun to do actually, and I'll probably be using it a lot more than I was. I'd used it a couple of times, but didn't realise that it was something that I could do a lot more of. One thing that I need to remind myself about as well is that actually children need to revisit the vocabulary a lot. Doing one set of words and doing one activity 1 week, and then doing the same words but doing a different kind of activity with them with the following week is a good way of keeping kind of visiting the words, because it takes up to 30 exposures to new vocabulary, I think, to actually internalise it. Next one.
Sorry, just a little comment. That's so good in terms of language development. If you think of little babies when they're learning what vocabulary is, they hear it a whole bunch of times and they make those mistakes, like they don't know that a truck belongs in the vehicle group, things like that. And until you finally, after so many times put together in the group, you have a good idea of what it means because of all the other words that go with it. And that's the idea of the cognitive concepts that go with vocabulary. So playing with that a lot is so good.
Yeah, and keep coming back to it. This one, vocabulary foursquare, is something that I also used as well, but I used it much more formally on something like this. And this is a one that I brought again from class, where a child said, "Travel, what mean this S?" And so we defined what travelling is, going from one place to another. He then drew a little picture, which is lovely. He drew China, Japan, Turkey, Korea. I'm going to pass it down with arrows going from one country to the other. And then his sentence was, "I'm travelling to a lot of countries in my summer holidays." So this is the way vocabulary foursquares are used. You don't actually have to have a template like this. You can just take an ordinary piece of paper and put lines across it, and they just do it themselves. An idea that was new to me during this conference was actually then revisiting these and playing a game with them. So I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to try and guess what it is. Of course, the children will know what it is, or you hope that they do, because I've actually drawn this picture from the previous week. So here's the picture. Any guesses on what it might be?
Space.
It looks like it's in space. Okay, I'm going to redo the definition. It's a big hole on the moon.
The crater.
It's a crater. So you sort of have to play a game, looking at the picture, then reading the definition, getting more and more clues, and then if you fall in a crater, you can't get out, was what one said, quite rightly. So that's the example of the 4 square. And then there was one more. This one, Merit, where are you, Merit? We were looking at this one this morning, and we're a little puzzled because X is an anagram defining words. So we said piece of clothing. X has sleeves and a hood. X is like a raincoat. So this was an example that I came up with, but we actually found it really difficult to do. We were trying to think of other ones. So now when we split up into our groups and do some of these activities together, if you'd like to choose this one to work on, because this was something that I learned during the conference, but actually when we came to do it together, we found it was really quite awkward, didn't we, Merit? We couldn't find any other examples of, so X is an orange. It's a fruit. It has pith and skin. It's like a.
But kids do this quite naturally.
I
Most
suppose
kids
so.
are less inhibited than we are,
Probably.
and more creative than
Yes,
we are.
maybe. But we actually
Because they
found
often
it quite
do it,
difficult.
especially with second language or third language learners. When they're trying to tell you something, they say, "Oh, it's like this," and they're trying to pull other examples of the word they're trying to find in of what they see in their own language.
That's why we have quite likely. You should have categories.
Yeah, I think.
If you say categories,
The
clothing, fruit, or something you eat,
Yeah.
then you narrow the whole range of what it could be, right? So
I mean, it would probably work for nouns. I'm not sure if it would work for vocabulary, but anyway, this was also another idea that we came across. And finally, I have a little handout for you at the end if you'd like to take it. 10 things the you can do today to improve instruction for ELL students. Can I just stress, none of this that you've seen is original. It's not my ideas. These are lectures that I attended while I was doing my master's degree, and a professor I loved very, very much put this list together, and I felt that it was really quite useful. It's stuff that you can take away and start immediately if you'd like to. So,
And some of it, I'm sure, will be stuff that you go.
I'm already doing that. And but,
new ideas.
no reminder.
none of these ideas are my ideas as such. I have some little activities for you to try out. So if you'd like to try out the vocabulary full square, I mean, maybe you should just come and take whichever activity you
Well,
want to
just a
take.
couple of minutes because Julian's still got some.
Okay, so we haven't got very long, but we've got shades of meaning. Who would like to do some shades of meaning? Here you are, do some shades of meaning. Shades of meaning, would you like a vocabulary full square to try out?
And anybody want to hear that?
Four square, ladies. Four square. And same idea about the different ways.
Claudine, if you have a I'll take one. Don't know how many you have of each one.
Oh, this one. Like to try doing a Foldable?
How long will it take? Too long. Get a spare one. And I was going to do the
Do you know what?
You and your husband speak between
English, but they talk they cannot talk in I can understand, but they'll talk in text and I answer it in English.
I've done one language what are you doing with English? I know, so that's why I'm going to do Yes.
Never like you
Let's go to second.
It wasn't so much when we were doing it, wasn't so much as making sure what way it goes.
I'd say it was an objective. It was
We had a great time. Like somebody
British teaching this one.
exterminate.
But all the words grey
I suppose in between these other words and then yes.
We don't have a swing.
Yeah.
This was the lady who shared on the Foldables. You heard of her? The file. I mean, there was really good cheering too. There was other stuff there. Yes, exactly. Like I said, I'm very happy with it. Revisiting it again.
This is nice. This is kind of thing is quite nice. More primary based. It just unless I think I would recommend a 15 minutes.
Secondary.
Just choosing the one
Right the word. Just on the back. Some symbols on the Some people, that's their weakest rubbish.
As I would say, actually, my
See something novel.
I want to go to this one as well, actually, but I'm so they're always talking about it. So I feel like I need particularly this is quite nice though, even for like actually very fun.
It's just a relaxed
I'm always like, wow, like amazing, like already, no work.
We can use that.
Where I didn't know it's got this given on level 5. I think it's too hard and it's far away. Except you I don't mind if it's somebody
shaking over the school fence.
I like that.
I have 4 minutes. All right, can we stop you there? Just want to quickly say about Claudine. Talk too much in the beginning, nobody will be surprised about that. So poor Claudine's got 4 minutes now. But we were very conscious of, we were there, the secondary school couldn't go. Joe wanted to go because he's very interested in mother tongue as well. There were no places left, it was completely booked. So we really wanted to see whether we could pick up something for secondary school. In Angela went to IB Physics. By accident, as we said, but we did really try to pick up some different models. So Claudine's going to tell you a tiny bit about it, but she will do again, Tracy, because we've run out of time. And it
Okay,
might-
so this Dr. Snow, she's an American researcher from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She's a researcher, but she's a very down-to-earth person, which I like. She actually came from middle school teachers who realized that their students had difficulties reading their content, what she calls content texts, so any math, science, humanities. So they got in touch with her, and she acknowledged the concerns. And of course, this is the state, so they are a state exam, of course, results and everything that results involved. And so they got together, and she created what she called the word generation. So to have a bank of words, and I have an example that I'll give you, a bank of words that are cross curricular. So these would be words that you would find in math, science, humanities, and that you would have at the 6, 7, 8 level. That's what they were working at, but it could be adapted at any level. And these words will be used in reading, explain of course, in reading comprehension, in writing, and they realized that the students, any middle school child, student who want to communicate in debates. So they had all these words were introduced on Monday, for instance, by the English teacher. And then the Tuesday, the math teacher would talk about these words, the science teacher the next day. So the words for the week were seen by the students every day in different situations. Okay? And debates, same thing, debates in all the subjects. So for the debates, I don't have much time, she suggested to start small. So the content, the time, choose working together, a pair, a group, a whole class. Of course, you would have, especially for EL students, you would have to teach specific phrases. Students will need to express their opinions. You need to teach those. Arguments and counter-arguments. You need to engage all students because sometimes the argument is that, oh, well, they don't have enough English. So you work on that. Engage all students so that they have their own opinions and think deeply. So you have them practicing asking questions, answering questions. One suggestion was, do you believe everything you hear in the media? These would be topics, of course, that are related to what they found in their subjects they're learning, but also in their everyday life to make it relevant, of course. And
there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot of word generation
and
online that you, yes, available as well.
And then she, of course, it's not a question of I'm the best, you're nothing. So demonstrate and reinforce respect and humility when they're discussing. Because sometimes you find that, you know, I have more this and more that, and that's what she. Of course, this is all together. You have the reading, the writing, the speaking all together. We know that this is nothing new. But what was interesting is that to involve the content area teacher. It's not just the English teacher who's going to be dealing with all that vocabulary. It has to be reinforced in all the subjects. And of course that involves collaboration. For the challenges that the teachers were having for the, and I would like that because that's clear, but making sure that the discourse, what the children are saying, is intelligible to everybody. Coherent, are you making sense? And it's equitable, that all the students are heard and have something to say. So we're not just 2 or 3 monopolizing the conversation, it's everybody. And what I really like is clear goals. Yeah, you have a rubric. You have a small rubric just to start with 1 criteria, 2 criteria, and then you build on.
It's a really nice sample of rubrics which actually might be useful for you within your subject because you don't often have a rubric that a really rigorous rubric to measure debate. But that was the key element of the programme. And she literally, when she first started, she was given, we have stuff to teach, we haven't got time for this, but we do need help. So they said, we'll give you 15 minutes a day. It was that small, but everyone was working on this key academic language. And Meral and I were talking when we were viewing this, is that academic language we'd always thought of as test tube and mountain and, you know, subject-specific vocabulary. And that's the point in this, is that
But if you look at the list,
it's not, it's that other language.
It's usually
yeah,
words that
it's-
have no definition, aren't they, as well? Things like although, however, moreover, firstly,
Yeah, this is
lastly,
just an
secondly.
example. And what I do, I was saying that to Judith, when I, because I'm myself, I learn English from my mother tongue, obviously, is to put the actual, because sometimes students don't know if it's a verb, a noun, an adjective. So actually, in my list, I actually put two, that shows them it's an action word, and I put the article, and adjective don't have anything, and of course you would have to add adverb. But it helps them to know, so you don't have confusion.
Can I just butt in again? Sorry, Claudine.
Yeah.
One of the words she used as well that we heard a lot was that they call them signal words. And if you go online and Google again signal words, you can find it. Say, for example, for persuasive writing. So you can say signal words for persuasive writing, and you will actually find ready-made lists of the kind of academic vocabulary that is necessary for you to be able to do some good persuasive writing. And you can adapt it for use at whatever grade level. You can go through it, take out the ones that are too advanced, and stick in the ones that you think should be there.
So start small, like anything, of course it's obvious. Otherwise, it can get overwhelming. But try, even because of course we have this. Oh, they can't, you know, they don't have enough. But we need to teach them to be able to say. Even I think, I don't think, I'm not sure. Just even if they. I find with the EL students, even if you at first you give them a script, it might not be what they want to say, but they have to start from something.
So this is the type of language you're not using every day. It sounds stiff and weird if we use this language all the time.
But it's language that they find in their textbooks, and their language that they find was difficult for them, for the students to understand. And her approach, methodology is a big word, but her approach is fruitful because in the States they have exams and tests, and it's shown over the years, not right away, over the years that students have improved. They have much richer vocabulary, and they use it when they're speaking and when they're writing. So obviously, it's working. It's working, I think. So, any questions? So start small, and of course for secondary teachers, collaboration. We're very lucky in primary and elementary that we have scheduled collaboration, because otherwise, you know, the students during their day might just hear the same thing over and over, or some of the words are never actually explained. So this was for 6, 7, 8 middle school. For the 4, 5, they have their start. They have a video. It's a new program they're starting. So they have actually a newscaster who comes on and uses that vocabulary in context.
About that.
And these are topics that are, it could be something happening in the neighborhood, in the country, in the county. It's something that the students are concerned about.
Really significant,
should have
really engaging, really significant.
So, and I'm sure they'll realize that they have to go, they can't spend grade 4, they have to go down, like, the whole spectrum.
But I think we have to stop there, because some of you are going to leave your meeting, and it's also finished at 2:35. It was a huge conference. Please come and talk to us if there's anything you think might be interesting.